Hi, everybody! Welcome back to my channel. I am Kai. I use he, they, and she pronouns, and this is Estelle of Imladris. And this is my very first episode in my series called Seems Right, spelled S-E-A-M-S, because I was amused. This series is about costuming and all things to do with costuming and how they relate to storytelling. Today we'll be talking about makeup and what it means to, wear makeup on for camera, for characters, how you can use makeup as a storytelling tool, and also because I am non-binary and I've had a long journey with makeup. Starting from being taught very young how to wear femme makeup, and then not wanting it and not vibing with it, and talking about how actually using makeup helped me find myself in my gender expression and how I feel about gender. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, and about makeup for mask presenting people specifically. There's plenty of amazing places if you want to go learn about makeup for femme presenting people. There is just a wide array of every kind of makeup you could imagine, but today my hope is to explore specifically makeup for mask presentation, for camera and storytelling, because that is my specialty and very near and dear to my heart. But from the top, let's talk a little bit about Seems Right and kind of why I started this channel in the first place. So I am a trained costume professional. I have worked in everything from theater and film and live entertainment all the way to, I've done children's birthday parties and everything in between. You name it, if there is a costume involved, I've probably done it at least once. And because of that, I have a very, I think, interesting experience with costuming, but today's subject in particular, makeup, plays a very big role in costuming. Now, when I say costuming, I'm not talking about your Halloween costume. I'm not talking about, what you might go buy at a Spirit Halloween store. That is a costume, but in future episodes, I will go into very deep detail about how practically everything is a costume, as it is defined by people who study these things. The history of dress is also known as costume history. If you wear a historical garments, it is called historical costume. So everything under the sun can fall under this category if it relates to the externalization of personal expression. So that's the micro bit about what costuming in here is defined as. So this today includes makeup. So specifically me and makeup, we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. And actually, I'm going to switch screens because you're all in store for a little treat, because we're going to go a little bit down memory lane. And I'm going to talk a little bit about makeup. This one. There I am. Hello, look at me. All these pictures. Ancient history pictures of Kai, everybody. So this picture is probably circa 2006. And this was probably my first really serious attempt at a beard. The picture is very blurry, and if it looks good to you, you're so kind to me, and this camera and the age of photography is also equally kind to me. But this was a revelation to me, because for the very first time, I was getting called sir, even though in my normal everyday life, I was a somewhat preppy athlete who had not thought too deeply about my gender. But I was obsessed with Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. And so I did this. And I had many, many versions of this makeup that I worked through over the years and learned more nuance and detail as I went. At the time, information about drag kings in particular was relatively hard for me to come by, even though there were drag kings. There have been drag kings since forever. And there are people who have used makeup to help them on their gender journey and express their gender in a way that is happy for them since forever. But finding resources on at the time was not something that I could do. I just wasn't finding them. It's not even that, you know, they may or may not have existed. I didn't find them. So I think many cosplayers and many people on their gender journeys reinvented the wheel from scratch without knowing it. And so this is the beginning. And then over time, I would add effects besides, you know, beards and things like that. A little content warning, there is going to be some fake injury and fake like scarring makeup. I am very, very fond of effects makeup as they relate to storytelling and personalization of your look. So there is a little bit. I will try and preface it before I switch to a picture that expressly has that. Then there's stuff like this, where I was like, I can add wires to my makeup. This is so fascinating. So this is the beginnings of me trying new effects, not just beard or different kinds of things. And this wire is just jewelry wire. But I used liquid latex to attach it to my face. A funny thing is, as I look at this, I can see that I'm not wearing foundation. I did not use anything to set my eyeshadow, and I am not wearing eyeliner or mascara, but I am wearing lipstick. So I made some very specific choices. I'm also very sweaty. I'm not really sure why in this picture. I did this for a presentation in college, and all of those details that I just pointed out that I can see in this picture are not negative. Like, they're still me. I still actually very much so like this picture. This conversation is not about makeup to meet beauty standards, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit, because beauty standards change every day. They are a fad, and they are something that people experience and enjoy or don't enjoy, and it is thrust upon them. But the subject of the makeup today is about affirming who you are and about telling a story for your character or for whatever, and a little bit about the technical reasons why people wear makeup, specifically why I wear makeup. This is actually one of the very first times probably any of you have seen me on stream without makeup on, because I always wear makeup. The technical reason for that we will get into in a little while. But for now, just know I can tell, just looking at this picture, that I am not wearing makeup, and it isn't because you can see all of the little spots on my face and the fact that I have really pronounced freckles. Okay. That's not helpful. What else do I have in here? And then here is another exploration of beards. My Pirates of the Caribbean Will Turner costume. This is actually hair. I used actual hair and trimmed it and put it on. But in this picture, even though it is very grainy, I can tell that I have started to evolve to use the system of makeup that I use today, even. And there's very subtle differences. And none of this is meant to appease anyone's idea of gender, what I'm supposed to look like as a certain gender. This is to accentuate the parts of me that I think suit the role that I'm playing or who I want to be perceived as. So this picture includes foundation, and besides the beard, I can see that I have contour on. I can see that I have probably a little bit of eyeliner, and I have contour around my nose, around my eyes, under my lip, on my jawbones, and on my forehead, to accentuate features that make it read more the way that I want to be seen. And zoomed out, you can't even tell. I just look like I'm just some guy. And I love this picture. But more recently, of course, I've been on quite a journey with makeup. We're going to get into that in a minute. But here are some of my many makeup looks just from last year. This is Haru from my Blade Runner series, a non-binary replicant who was wearing makeup that is actually in reference to the way that people wear makeup to confuse facial recognition software because they're paranoid, and I love that for them. And it's probably the closest that I've come to like glam makeup in recent times on stream, and I really enjoyed this look. Actually, it was very freeing to do something big and like geometric. At any point in time during all of this, if anybody has questions as well, please feel free to throw them in chat. We're gonna talk for like an hour and then take a break, and then when we come back, I'm gonna go through and put on makeup for a show tonight over on Happy Jacks RPG for Mouse Ritter, and I will walk you through some of that process after the break. But for now, questions. And you can also ask me questions later, obviously. But just gonna go through some like, this is the logic of these looks and why this is happening. Look at all you lovely people in here. I see we've got a bunch of wonderful familiar faces in chat, including Erica and Azra yelling joyfully at each other, which I just love so much. Welcome in, everybody. So here is the man, the myth, the legend, the leaky, dusty man, Mr. Xainan Esh, specifically at the end. Oh, no, this is from the beginning of Arc 2, where I had melty face markings, which eventually did evolve into the Arc 2 face markings, which was a little treat for me. And here's what that ends up looking like an episode later. This is my look from Romeo and Juliet. I'm wearing makeup, but I'm also wearing a mask, so that doesn't really matter. This is my Roguelike Rumbles character who was almost the grand champion of the season, Rivers Omerica, who is a lizard folk crocodile. And he's modeled off of some very funny quirks about animals that I ran into at Disneyland. And a lot of animals at Disneyland have interesting white markings. They're not vitiligo as far as anyone knows. They're like possibly a infection. Not really sure. But I was a little crocodile man. And so I had scales and fun white makeup and a question in the chat. Yes, the melting was a fun little thing for me, including that everything was on fire, so you sweat when it's hot. Question in chat. Talk a little bit about the Xainan makeup journey. Oh my gosh. So Xainan's makeup was kind of a labor of love for myself, as well as a means in which for me to tell stories, which is what this is all about, right? So my goal with Xainan's look from the beginning, because the majority of what you see when I am doing streaming is my face. And so I wanted a character that I could tell a story using as little real estate of myself outside of my face as possible. And I really was captivated by the idea of someone who has glowing makeup for narrative reasons. And I started to develop this idea of how to do facial markings on a person that were ones that I could play with. So for those of you who don't know, facial markings are something as a tradition that can be found in multiple cultures around the world. But specifically, my goal and many conversations I had with C about this was to avoid accidentally taking markings of significance from other cultures and appropriating them, even if by accident, for Xainan. And so I did research on indigenous peoples from around the world, like religious traditions that involve painting. I looked everywhere that me as a costume historian could think to look to find facial markings to make sure that I wasn't borrowing specifically things like there are a few American Plains tribes that have V-shaped markings that specifically they're solid from their nose down. And so I did not want to accidentally do something like that. You'll notice that I don't do a lot of vertical or horizontal, specifically lines, for the same reason, because there are a lot of cultures that do have practices of vertical or horizontal lines. And if I were to ever go that way, I would very carefully research if I were stepping on something that is not for me. But also, it was so funny because this occurred to me much later in the game. I'm also from a culture that has some facial markings that are used in specifically theater, because Japan has a long history of kabuki and no theater that has these kinds of facial markings, but they're traditionally in red or black. So Xainan's facial markings in particular were a particular point of interest to me from the very beginning, inspired by things like Destiny and just some like I have a lot of love of things like you saw with Haru. I really like big geometric shapes on the face. And so yeah, that's the beginning of Xainan's makeup, which if you don't know, each look from Arc 1's look all the way to Arc 2 and Arc 3, each of them have different names. They all mean something a little different, because my goal, any choice that is made, is that it means something. So the Arc 1 look in particular, the concept was wearing your tears. And so Xainan literally wearing streak marks from the corners of his eyes down because he is wearing his grief. From Vault Companions, hi Patrick. Has there ever been a look that evolved way different from the initial idea? Absolutely. Sometimes, depending on how long-term the character's look is going to be, it might be something that I do once, or at least I think I'm only going to do once, and then never again. But that's generally not what ends up happening. The first one, and actually this is very funny because you're the one asking me this, the one that comes to mind is in this folder, but is Mart from Angels and Atoms. Where is Mart? So Mart's a funny guy because he's a robot. And he doesn't have any humanoid features at all. And so my first inclination, I went through like, maybe I just don't wear a makeup look. Maybe I don't do any like anything other than just like my regular standard look. And then I found these sunglasses. And I was like, well, these, and I already had them around. And I went, well, how do I make a look that's compelling with sunglasses? And I don't know if you can even see it, but I could see it in little bits of light. Because Mart has repurposed panels and things like that, and he's been around for a very long time. He has dents and scratches and things, so I always had gold scratches on my face that would just catch the light. My original thought with Mart, again, cannot stress enough, was just like plain. I was gonna do like a very clean 1950s look. Ooh, you can't say that about my glasses. Oh my gosh, Tavash looks about my glasses. You're too nice to me. Tavash is a character from Transplaner, who is an NPC that just appeared and is I'm not normal. But for Mart, actually the look changed drastically when I found the sunglasses, and I started to add more and more details that are so small, but they were fun for me more than anything else. And you'll notice there's a running theme as I get into some of these looks. It's like, I did that for me. Which I think is the most important thing when you're doing this kind of stuff. Here's more Xainan times. The last time we see him without the cracks on his face. I took a picture because I knew. But the other thing with looks is always, like, this is another one that actually has changed drastically from what I originally thought, and I love it, which is the cracks on Xainan's face, which are now forever a part of him will be in every look forever. Because Xainan as a character, the concept was I wanted someone who wore visible scars without shame or, you know, any kind of preconceived beauty standards on it, because I think scars are absolutely gorgeous. While this is fake, this is not a scar. I did this for Xainan. I really enjoy it, and I do actually have some like very subtle scars and things on my face. And so I really like them. Ooh, what inspired my look? Let's see here. Yes, what inspired the look for your Sun in Chains character? Gosh, Hoshiro. So this is my character from Sun in Chains. He is kind of a nightmare person, but I love him so much. So Hoshiro is very rooted in my Japanese ancestry. If you don't know, there's two things about Hoshiro that I think are very fun, because in Japan, men are always clean shaven. And tattoos are very taboo. They both are rooted in very like deep traumatic things that have happened in the country. The shaving is because it used to be a sign of the feudal lords, the shogunate and the samurai would have facial hair, and so ever since then it's been kind of deemed as very taboo because people don't do that anymore there. And so that was part of it, and then also like a very, I think, kind of Western point of view, but it was a true thing, which is that there were a lot of gangsters and things like that in the like 1900s in Japan that also had facial hair. And tied into that, the oldest gang organization in Japan, the Yakuza, one of the oldest organizations in Japan, very famously uses tattooing as part of its initiation. And so tattooing is also very taboo in Japan. And I wanted to kind of play with someone who is visibly, like, to someone who is Japanese, very taboo. But he is also very Japanese. He wears a kimono. He wields a samurai sword. He has traditional irazumi tattooing all over him, which is the like Japanese tapped tattooing that is now everywhere all the time. And so he is two aspects of Japanese culture that are deeply taboo that I think are quite wonderful. I love facial hair. I love tattoos. And so exploring my relationship with them as a externalized, like, taboo feature was a lot of the journey with him, to the point where his tattoos are all magic, and it's where his warlock magic is cast from, is from within his tattoos. And so this is the only tattoo that I draw on him, but he has tattoos behind his ears. He has his full sleeves. He has tattoos on his chest, on his ribs, on his back. He has tattoos literally everywhere, and every spell that he casts comes from one. The one on his face is Tales of the Valiant. Basically has a version of the Eldritch Invocation Devil's Sight for warlocks, where you have really improved dark vision. And he has that. And so this is the like mark for being able to see into the world of magic, essentially. And that is the origin of Hoshiro. And I am absolutely enamored with how it has come out. But yeah, thanks for the question. From Gray. How do you approach depicting markings and facial scars respectfully? I could talk about this forever. So there have been so many versions of, like, specifically scarring that even I see in like movies and in animated things, where I'm like, that's not really what scars look like. And like Xainan's are a little bit like that, but in a way that I find very fruitful and wonderful. So I'm not to critique any of that, but for me, I always want people to feel empowered to show scars. Like, there are a lot of very, very famous actors that have talked about like feeling self-conscious and being told that they weren't going to go very far because they had pronounced facial scars. One of the most famous ones I can think of is Tina Fey has a facial scar. And you would never know, like when you just think about her face, you're like, oh yeah, that's Tina Fey, but you don't think about the fact that she has a little scar. I think it's on her cheek. But you have to look for it. And I don't know, I've always loved scars. I think that they're a sign that you've done things, and that's kind of my big I'll say my hill that I will stand and yell on for Xainan, which is I think scars are beautiful, and so my big pursuit with it is to make it so that people who do have facial scars, that do have to live in a world that has beauty standards that tell them that maybe they're not beautiful, to say, no, I think scars are great. scars are they just are. There's no judgment from me upon them, and I think that the world should embrace that difference a lot more. And so the research that I do is a lot of like, are there any scars that have really negative connotations, either like, or cultural connotations? So like scarification is a practice in which people purposely scar, and so like I don't feel like I am in a place that I should use scarification as a character feature, unless there's like very, very, very specific reasons. Branding has very specific connotations. So those are the things that you will probably never see me engage with. But overall, and there's like scars that have to do with, like, if you've ever heard of the Glasgow smile, it's a very grim thing that people actually had happen, that are facial scars. Like, I would never do that to a character. But outside of that, I feel like that is just a place where it's a canvas for me where I can add story. So Xainan has so many scars because he lived through an apocalypse. And I think that is just his story written on his skin. In the same way with facial markings of any kind, like the research that I do, I go looking, I have like my sets of groups that I know traditionally do it, which is like Indigenous people around the world. So there are Aboriginal facial markings down in Oceania. There's all kinds of Polynesian facial markings. There is, obviously American Native tribes. There are Central and South American, groups that all have practices of it. So if there's documentation for it, if I'm thinking about a new version of something or a new facial marking setup of some sort, I usually go and look into it. There are some, like the ones for Haru, that I was fairly certain I was in the clear with because they are a reference not to a cultural one, but to an act of rebellion, that there's a lot of really good documentation on there out in the world about it, especially to do with the Hong Kong riots a couple of years ago. And so that is able to be found. So that's kind of my like direction with it. And then I also, what does it mean to the character? Why this story? So Xainan's go here because he is always carrying his grief. And if, someone like Haru had meaning in it other than being kind of punk and counterculture in a world where everything is facial recognition and eye scanning and things like that, I love the asymmetry of it because Haru is a deceitful and inconsistent person. So yeah, let's see here. Azura, would you ever consider the kind of ritual scarification in certain pagan practices for a character, or is it something you intend to avoid due to the connotations and the connections? I know a lot of people who are practitioners of various, pagan beliefs. I am not one of them, and so it's one of those things where, like, if that were something that, in my research I found that people were okay with someone from the outside engaging with as a cultural practice, I would be more interested in doing it. I know that I have a lot of complicated feelings about some of the beliefs in specifically modern paganism because it is a self-developed practice, and some of it borrows from cultures that they didn't get to ask. But a lot of it is fine. It's not for me in that's not my culture. And if I were invited into using it, that would be a very different story. I wouldn't be like, I'm uncomfortable if someone who understood it and was a practitioner of it invited me into using it. I would be okay with that. But that's kind of my general overall thing is like, again, if I were at a table with someone who was, trying to do a character from their personal culture and invited me to also participate in that practice of any kind, I would, talk to them about it and then, respectfully, hopefully engage with it if, say, we were playing siblings or something like that. Because it's not just... There are two bodies that have perception put on them within that particular dichotomy, which is my body, a mixed Asian person wearing that thing, and my character wearing that thing. And even if my character belongs to that culture, is it then something that I can wear? This goes with cosplay as well. If that character belongs to that culture, is that and the character can wear it, is that then something that I can put on my body? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so that's kind of the conversation I have with myself about it. Do you sketch out your makeup, from Erica? Do you sketch out your makeup somewhere to keep it consistent for long-term APs? I love that you asked this question. The funny thing is, while some of these photos are definitely photos from, like going live, a lot of them are actually documentation pictures. So if I have a look that I really like, I have this picture. This is Sindri from a one-shot over on Roll D5. This was a two-shot. I did this makeup in about an hour and then was like, I did not take any photos of it. I should document it before I sweat through it. So this is a photo from the very top of the show when we're about to go live, because I was like, I have to do this makeup again in a few days. So I will largely, especially because sketching to me is something that I would do for like a long-term character. So like every arc I will sketch out Xainan's look. And actually, because we're talking about it, I will also open I have a chart for Xainan in particular. He's probably the biggest example that I have of this. Why is that not working? When I can open it, I will. There we go. My computer took a minute. So what I have for every arc for Xainan is not only a sketch of the face. So this is the arc 2 sketch, and this is just a generic blank that you can just find on the internet. And then all of these, obviously all the purple is me and the green is me. So I have that. And then I then also do this where I have, trying to find the not mirrored one. Excuse my dyslexia. Okay, so then I have me doing a makeup prototype test with photos, the reference pictures, and the sketch. All of these all working in harmony. And I looked at this every single time I put this makeup on. Like, I keep a copy of it in a sheet protector in my bathroom and I stick it to the mirror. But I don't stick this version to the mirror because, as I said in the first stream, I'm a little dyslexic. So the one that I actually stuck to the mirror is this one. And I have big, bold, mirrored, because otherwise I will not be able to tell which one's which. And I will do so often. But then this way, when I'm looking at the mirror, I'm going, look at the picture, look up at my face, and it's a straight line. So, oh, this is the side that I have the dash in my eyebrow. Fantastic. This is the side where that scar goes. And that's how I remember. But I also have this as reference, complete with very detailed photos of the makeup and the reference pictures, both the Arc 2 artwork, my little quick sketch of the direction of the eye markings and the original design from Arc 1. So that is how I keep track of really complex stuff. Some of them, like... looking for a particular one. So Merrick. Because Merrick was so simple, I would more keep track of which makeups I would use, and less about like exactly where I put stuff. But I could have done the same makeup charting that I did do with Xainan with Merrick. The only thing that I had to remember, which I did almost forget multiple times, is that he does have a facial scar. Right here in the middle of his cheek, and I almost forgot it multiple times. But with Merrick, the big thing for him was put on mustache, put on beard in usual place that I put beard. And so I didn't make a chart for him. I just, kept a picture. I kept a few pictures, just like you've seen a few others, and I would reference those as I go. Here's a normal-ish. Why is it so small? Here he is. Hear him. And so I know what methods I'm using. Yeah. We're talking about Oka, my beloved. I'm normal about Okahan. I'm not. I'm lying to you all. From Indie Wanderer, what's your process for scars? Are they just drawn on liquid latex, etc.? Seeing in photos, they look so 3D. So I have a very specific process with scars. I've probably done scarring on makeup longer than anyone would think reasonable. The process with scars, where's that really good clear Xainan picture? That's a clear Xainan picture. It's not the one I want, though. This one's pretty good. So, all of my makeups are actually using all my scars use a base color, rigid collodion, and sometimes a little bit of extra texture on top of that. Rigid collodion, also just called scarring liquid, is an effects makeup that you can buy from most makeup stores that sell theatrical makeup. And it is essentially it's a hardening agent, so that as it shrinks, it pulls your skin a little, so that's what causes the dimensional property to it. And putting the color underneath it sets it underneath the scar, because like I said, I do have some scars, and I actually figured some of this out through learning like from professionals, and some of it from just looking at my own scars and going, how would I recreate this? And so a lot of scarring, especially really deep scarring, has coloration deeper inside of it. So what I tend to do is I will paint it on. So for Xainan in particular, I paint on all the lavender first, and then I paint on the rigid collodion, and then it does that magic shrinking thing that rigid collodion does. There's a really good one in here at that. There he is. So you can even see after an entire very long stream in which I cried a lot, that there is still texture and depth to these scars. The only thing about rigid collodion, and this is something that I will remind you for all makeup, you should use the correct remover. Rigid collodion has its own very specific remover, just like the makeup that Erica and Chat is talking about, which is spirit gum. Spirit gum is best removed by oils. Rigid collodion has an alcohol base to some of its setting process, so the best way to remove it is with a remover that does have some rubbing alcohol in it. They sell specifically rigid collodion or scarring liquid remover. I highly recommend you buy that. For things like spirit gum and latex, you can get away with oils, but specifically with rigid collodion, I do highly, highly recommend the remover. I use it all the time. Let's see here. Looking at some questions. We got more good questions. But yeah, that's how I do the scarring. And it varies in size and scope. So like the idea with Merrick's was that it was so old that it was almost blending into his skin. I wish this picture were clearer and bigger because you can see how nice and big his scar is in that picture. Let me see if I can find it. Because the point of his scar was that he had had it since he was very young. And the truth is that's a bit of a that's a fictionalized version of how scars work from when you're very young, but I liked it, so I did it. Here's a different one, but it'll do the job. So you can see like his scar is almost not visible. And what I use for that one and for Xainan for Arc 3 is I actually just use a little bit of like light pink lipstick for color instead of like painting it on using a method that I'll show you later on. So yeah, that's scarring. Let's see here, Corey Stahl. In character creation, would you ever put other types of cultural art forms in your makeup, like Kitsugi? When listening to The Second Stranger, yes. The cracks that you are seeing are specifically actually inspired by Kitsugi. I love Kitsugi so much. It's a beautiful practice for those of you who don't know. Kitsugi is the sealing of broken ceramics using gold, and like broken, you can do it with other things too, but the like traditional is like a teacup or a teapot that's been broken, and then they fill the cracks with gold, which to me is like the epitome of my feelings about scars. So yes, I will always reach back to cultural touchstones for me that have always inspired me, and Kitsugi is definitely one of them. And it's not an accident that I maybe occasionally refer to them as golden scars. Yeah, love pulling on cultural things for that kind of stuff. With scars that are fresh, would you change coloration over time with the makeup in a way that reflects the healing? Yes, I absolutely would. If from Corey Stahl, if the character had like fresh scars that slowly changed and changed color, would I change the color? If I was playing a character, so like, for example, I guess light spoilers for the Stewards War over on Taino Tales that took place over very long periods of time. Say I played a character that in the very first episode had a fresh scar. Then they do a time jump. In the time jump, maybe the scar has completely changed colors. The truth about Merrick's is that it would have wandered on his skin. It would not have remained on his face. I did kind of imply some of it, because I know what the original wound was, but scars themselves move and change shape. They change color over time, and so that I would say like the true story is in the details of things, and so the more truth I can bring to a story that to me the scars that a character carries are important. The more truth I can bring to that, the more true it will feel to someone who has scars. And that is the most important thing to me. What else? Yes, Gray, I would be very comfortable with the reference pictures that I have shared being used for references for other art. That is all good. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my journey with makeup and the various ways in which I have used it. This does somewhat include also things like, so this is Road from Outrunners over on Happy Jacks, and I love a hair tint ever since I started bleaching for Xainan, the front of my hair, that I'm obsessed with. I've also fallen in love with hair makeup, which they make a lot of, and they make it for dark hair and light hair, and it's awesome because I can change my hair color whenever I want and then wash it out the same day. So for Road is a giant bird person. He's like somewhat inspired by the way that archaeologists think that velociraptors actually looked, which were big and feathery. So he's like a feathery lizard person, but humanoid. And so I wanted him to be very colorful. He had a very big personality, so I tried to lay in as much of that as possible as well. So he had teal hair to go with his teal feathers that also are in hair. I put feathers in my hair as well. And the makeup pieces were scales of everything from like an earthy tone all the way up to blues, because again, to get that like reptile feeling, scales are obviously a part of it, but also that like color of like tropical birds was very important to me for him. So that look was so fun and I loved it so much. And you can tell that I do this scale thing often because I really like it. This is Bucket from One Shot for Sync. I love scales. And all these are stencils, for the record. These are stencils that you can buy that are meant to be like airbrush stencils for pastry making or for makeup. And I use eyeshadow, and I just eyeshadow them onto my skin, and it's awesome. Bucket was really fun because I got to be all barnacle-y. Bucket was a reborn dragonborn, reborn through the magical power of crabs. And so he's real ocean saturated, and so he has barnacles and things. And so the barnacles that you see, the really dimensional ones are real barnacles that I use spirit gum to attach to my face. And the little ones are all just painted on using white makeup. But yeah, that's a little tour of my makeup adventures. I feel like there's one that is missing from this that I would be remiss to not mention. Uule, my sea elf, who was one of my very few endeavors in going like full face with a color. Where did that go? Find the window. I think I closed the window. Interesting. And then I'm going to talk about this guy right here. As soon as I find Uule. So today, after the break, which will be in a few minutes, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my makeup with you all, starting from zero. So I have no makeup on right now at all. This is what I usually look like in my day-to-day. I don't wear makeup, just as a person. I don't feel the drive to. It's not a knock on people who do like makeup. It's just not for me. But the science of makeup and the science behind costuming, I'm very, very fascinated by. And so one of the things I learned when I was in my undergraduate program, actually, is that little kind of just like a it's not really body horror, it's just like a weird body fact content warning. Here's Uule. I found them. But content warning, your skin is transparent. And I don't mean that to be weird. It's just factually true. The human skin is lightly transparent. And so what we think of when we think of what people look like, the human eye doesn't see that transparency as clearly. But cameras, especially still images, can... they're made to pick up light, right? Okay, so there's that. They're made to pick up light. And so I'll show you just even a side-by-side of my current face. I can't get closer to the camera. It won't help. But my current face looks a little bit more matte, I think, than it would normally for you all, because I don't have any makeup on. And then the midpoint is Bob and Lore here. This is a picture of me and Bob and Lore, which is just my base makeup with some kind of fun stuff added onto it. And then this is Uule, who is one of my only characters I've played on stream that is full face, and I did full face for every show, using Mayron Paradise aqua colors. And you'll notice that I look really like flat. My skin looks very flat, because they're full. These are the difference between no coverage of makeup, partial coverage of makeup, the way that normal foundation for public wear is not completely opaque. And then obviously to make my skin blue, that makeup is not opaque. That makeup is not see-through at all. It is completely opaque. The other way. And so that is like the logic behind makeup. And the reason why I practically always wear makeup on stream is because I want to look consistent. And you all have skin, I think. And you all know that your skin looks different from day to day, and so does mine. The only thing that makes me sad about wearing makeup every day is that I have some great freckles that no one ever sees. But anytime you hear me talking about freckles, it's because I have freckles and I love them. Gray's Void says, what stories do you tend to gravitate towards telling through your makeup? I mean, makeup is essentially painting on a person's life, right? Like, that's at its core what it is. The same way that drawing artwork of them is drawing a person to life. And I think of makeup specifically for characters as painting on your character. And that's the like way that it works when you add everything from just like the base layer of it all the way up to like big markings like Erule has, or scars like Xainan, because that is living in their skin for a minute. The whole practice of it is always like, does this person have a scar? Do they wear makeup every day? Like, what kind of personal care do they go through when they interact with the world? So for like Erule, the white is markings that he puts on himself. He is a siren from an island of sirens, and they use body markings to disguise himself among the water because they're sirens, and that's what you do. But for him in particular, they're also covering shadow markings that were mechanically, because it's Dungeons and Dragons, he had a magical tattoo that he would cover with the white makeup. That was a black tattoo. And so there's always story upon story upon story of what are those markings? Oh, you put those on every day. That's neat. Oh, they're cultural for you. That's very cool. Tell me about your culture. I basically see them all as invitations. But then there's also the little extra thing in there of like, and underneath all of that, he's actually still using it to hide a secret. All of that in little markings on his face. So yeah, those are, if I'm going to tell a story with makeup, I want it to have depth. I want it to be an invitation, because I'm wearing it not just for the presentery fact of like putting on a show. I do this stuff for home games. I wear makeup when no one's going to see me other than my friends. This is a makeup look from a podcast that I did. This was from the Loom of Severed Strands with, oh my gosh, my brain just went completely blank. With an amazing group of podcasters that I will remember. No Quest for the Wicked. There it is. It's like, it's going to come back to me right now. No Quest for the Wicked. We did Loom of Severed Strands, which was another Tales of the Valiant game. They're strictly a podcast. But I was playing a cute little druid who had big freckles and had kind of like always a little unkept curly hair. And so I had curly hair and I had freckles, because that to me is a visual reminder of who Tyree was in that game. I love that kind of stuff. So yeah. The whole logic behind all of it, costuming, hair, makeup, for me is always, how do I not only engage others, but the other side of it that I didn't say is, it is part of the practice for me of putting that character on and getting into their mindset. it helps me so much. I have like big grounding practices with specifically Xainan, a character that I work very hard to keep consistent, and he will have to be consistent for the entire run of the Chaos Protocol. So how do I keep that thread? How do I get back into his logic, his physicality, his mindset? And so I have playlists. I have every Saturday I make eggs, because Xainan's favorite food is eggs, and I make them. I also make them for my roommate, because part of the other thing that he loves to do is make food for others, because he's a farm boy and I love him. And then I also put on the makeup. I listen to the music. I listen to pieces of the previous session. I look at my notes. I look at my dramaturgy stuff. All of that also goes into then putting on the scars, and nothing feels more grounding in Xainan than putting on those scars, because the thing about rigid Callidian is that it is rigid. It does hold your face slightly different, because it is tightening your skin and changing the way it feels. So that lip scar that he has, sometimes I can really feel it if I put it on well, because it pulls ever so slightly, and it's literally the experience of walking in someone else's shoes for an hour or two, which is so cool. Yeah. Well, with that, that's the other thing. Erica did point out, it does also help with character bleed, which is like the cool thing about it is that after a really intense session, I can take it all off. I can put the away, and I am back looking at the mirror at myself. It is very much so also an act of self-care to go to these places of very heightened emotions and tell very heightened stories. And like, I will never forget the feeling. There was one episode of the Doomsayers that was, the Doomsayers GM'd by the Trauma Man himself. The Chaos Protocol can be very intense, and one of the grounding practices after these moments to me is always taking off the makeup. There was an episode of the Doomsayers that ended with Merrick so upset. And after check-ins and all of the regular table care, the other thing that was so nice is that after every session of the Doomsayers, I had to go shower, because otherwise I was sleeping with my hair curled like that, because I was doing sleep-in curlers, so that was like bulletproof curls. And I would wash my hair out and go back to having my hair instead of having Merrick's hair. And I just remember just like how grounding that was every time. And after that episode, just standing in the water and knowing that when I got out of the shower, I would have my hair and Merrick would be done for the day. So yeah, a little bit of self-care, a little bit of getting into character, storytelling, all of these things all folded into makeup. And so when we come back, we're going to take a quick 10. When we come back, I'm going to put on my makeup for Bobbin Lure, a mouse from Mouse Ritter, over on Happy Jacks. But in the meantime, everybody, go grab a snack, drink some water, pet your pets if you got them, and we'll be back in 10. See you soon. Hello, welcome back. Azra, you're my hero. As always, I left myself muted. The thing is, I have this fantastic mute button that I really like. It's very useful, because I'm sure plenty of you have seen me mouthing off when I am muted on stream. But I want to keep that for me, so I have a really good mute system. Unfortunately, sometimes I forget that I'm muted. Anyways, hi everybody. Welcome back from the break. Thank you for petting your cats. My cats wanted nothing to do with me, so I did not pet a cat, unfortunately. I did not take my own advice, but it's fine. Welcome back. We're going to do a little tour of makeup tools, and I'm also going to get my makeup on. So tonight I have What About Bob's, which is a Mouse Ritter actual play over on the Happy Jacks RPG Network at 7 p.m. Tune in. It's going to be a good time. We're playing Mouse Ritter, which is a game using like the really old school dungeon crawl style D&D rules. But the twist on it is that you're all mice. And it's very fun. And on that show, I play a mouse called Bobbin Lure, because everyone's name is Bob. So it's Bob apostrophe N Lure. And he is a sea mouse. And by sea mouse, I mean he guides a barge across a puddle or a very small river. And because the whole thing about mouse ridders, it's about scale, right? So imagine being one of the smallest creatures in the forest trying to survive. And so that is the kind of conceit behind Mouse Ritter. So I play a scarred old mice named Bobbin Lure. And they're just a little guy, but they're also I also have to like wear makeup and things. Well, I don't have to, but I love doing it. So I'm going to start getting ready for that. And while I do so, I thought it'd be very fun to give you a little tour of my makeup and about my process. And I'm going to start with a little tour of just some like larger tools that you'll see me use. And then I'll show you the makeup as I'm putting it on. Erica asked, spelled Bobbin. It's, I'll put it in chat, but it's Bob apostrophe N. Bobbin Lure. Because he likes water, so it's like a reference to when you go fishing. There's a lure, bobs in the water. We also have Bob Hope, Bob 303, who's our science experiment mouse, and then Bob SOCKS or Bobby Socks, but like it's a joke. It's a play on words using Spanish. It's a whole thing, but that's the crew, and I am delighted to go back. That show is wrapping up very soon, but I've had such a good time with it, and I love playing over on Happy Jacks because we actually play in person. So part of the reason for the gap between these two shows is because I have to actually drive to the studio where we record, and Happy Jacks is one of the oldest actual play networks on the internet. It's a very good time. Everyone who is on there is just such a delight. I've had just a really good time playing with them over the last couple of years and being friends with them. And Mouse Ritter, What About Bob's is just another in a long series of delightful games in which we just go and chill and play games. And it's a kind of game system education forward network. So we're also talking through, we almost exclusively play indie games. Right now is the very rare occasion in which someone is actually running Dungeons and Dragons on there. But my last game that you saw Road from is a system called Starscape that I'll actually be a writer on later this year. I'm one of the guest writers from the Kickstarter because the game master and the current runner of Happy Jacks is the game designer for Starscape, which is the game that system is. But that's where I played The One Ring by Free League and my Blade Runner game, which is also by Free League. And we do everything from like micro zine published games and upward to like wildly successful Kickstarters and things like that. So you should come check that out tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, or you can catch obviously the VOD. happyjacks.org has all of that information. And I'll put that in the chat. Happy Jacks. That's us. But for now, I actually have to become Bob and Lure and do the thing that we've been talking about, which is makeup. So a little tour of the tools that you will be seeing. First of all, these are my brushes. This is one of my cups of brushes. These are my slightly used brushes. And this is your semi-regular reminder that if you are a makeup user, it's time to clean your brushes. Because no one ever does it. You definitely should. You should clean your brushes. You should do it very, very soon. You should get a nice brush cleaner. You should treat them nice and good. They take care of you. You should take care of them. Makeup brush. These are my trick that you won't see tonight, but at a future video I'll probably show you what I use these for. But this is actually part of my beard system, these clear little hand slidey palette things. I use these to help me with the stipple brush. And I have two because you want to keep your color separate with makeup. This is my Xainan beard color one. It is slightly purple. And this is my brown Kai, natural hair beard color one. But I also use it for like blacks and things like that. But I got Xainan his own because the purple man must remain purple. But I haven't been using that recently because he's been brown. I have my sponge box, not to be confused with Bob my sponge box, which is just a soap dish that I drilled some holes in because I couldn't find one that I liked. There are many ways to apply makeup. I am an old school person who uses wedges still. This is my foam wedge that you will see me use in just a moment, and something you won't see me use tonight, but I like having them on hand at all times. This is my stipple brush for doing my beards. I'll show you some other time how those work exactly, but they're a good time. And there's holes in it so that the brushes can dry, especially when I rinse them out, because I also clean those regularly. And then the other things that I have that are just tools, this is my brush cleaner, so you can knock off powders and things. It's a silicone brush cleaner. I don't remember where I got this one. But you can take a brush that maybe has some like eyeshadow or whatever on it, a dry medium, and just brush it off on here, and it'll take a lot of it off so that you can use it for a different color. And then I have my emergency tools. I have Q-tips and a cut in half cotton round, because if I put my makeup on poorly, I can fix it with this. And then last but not least, I have my wet ones, again for the same reason of oops, I messed up, or oops, I got makeup all over my hands. And then a fan, which we'll get into. You'll see why I have this in a little bit. But first, we need... Oh wait, and you'll also see these. They have water in them. These are glass bowls that I use for this very purpose all the time. And the thing that you can't see because it's down here below my camera, this is a mirror. I also have a hand mirror that I keep at my desk. Mirror. Ooh. Obviously useful for putting on makeup. And this mirror that's down here that I'll be doing my makeup in is also got a light in it, so I'm going to be a little blown out. I will turn it off on occasion to show you exactly what's going on. But in the meantime, I need to see what I'm doing. So, we're going to start with some foundation. And please feel free to still add those questions, etc. Where's my foundation? I just had it in my hand. So, I use cheap Maybelline New York Fit Pro Matte Poreless makeup. This comes in probably one of the widest varieties of colors I've seen in like a drugstore foundation. And this is the one that actually is my real skin color, which is fantastic. Your makeup should match your skin, which is why there should be makeup in every color imaginable. They should make makeup that is darker. They should make makeup that is lighter. They should make it that is more warm tone and more cool tone. If you find a foundation that works for you, hopefully they continue to make it forever, and hopefully it is not very expensive. This is the one that has been working for me for years and years and years. I will be so sad if they ever change it or get rid of it. So yeah, wear foundation not because your skin isn't perfect as it is. If you do have, say, a blemish or something you do want to cover, I don't right now, but I brought this just to show you. I use really cheap, like, stick concealer. They make it in creams as well. And you can use it and just dab it on and then blend it and then cover it with foundation, and no one will know that you have anything on your skin that you don't like. But this is gold. Foundation that looks good on you. I highly recommend, if you get a chance, to go to a store that has testers, and bring wipes, because you don't know who else has tested that makeup. But put it on your skin and let it dry, because you'd be unpleasantly surprised sometimes by what color some of the stuff actually looks like on your skin. So all I've done is taken some and put it on here. In the near future, I might switch over to using brushes, which is what most people do. But I learned to put on makeup for theater, so I'm still using wedges. Put a little on this wedge and just start applying it. And as I do, I can see where my skin texture starts to change. And this is because, again, the light stops passing so far through my skin. And you can see that I start to look different immediately. And I just think that that's wild. So I will do half my face to start, and you will be able to probably perceive the difference pretty quickly about what I look like with and without foundation. And you want to make sure to get under your jaw, down your neck, because your skin doesn't stop with your chin. And then the other thing about a good foundation is that it will hold your makeup for you, which you'll see in a moment will be very useful. But if you were to, say, apply eyeshadow, it would actually stick to this. Whereas if you just put it on your regular skin, you're hoping that the oils on your skin alone are good enough to hold it in place, which is just not how that works. So I'm going to turn off this light for a second. And this half of my face, this one, has the foundation on and this one doesn't. It is not a mistake that this one seems to glow more. Yes, I do have a light here, but even if I turned it off... Oh, too dark. Even if I turned this light off, you could probably tell the difference just in my main light, that this side is a little shinier and looks a little, I don't know, less lively. There's something about it in the way that the camera perceives it that it loses some of its, like, our eyes are looking for like a 2-dimensional surface, and this is actually a 3-dimensional surface. And so the light is going deeper into my skin, whereas on this side, it's staying mostly on the surface. And even like the way that shadows play on your skin looks different, I think, in foundation and no foundation. So yeah, just a little, that's why you will almost always see me wear makeup, because I want to make sure that all the details of my expressions, my face, show up on camera. And this is not a knock on people who don't want to wear makeup on stream, or saying that they're doing it wrong. I'm just saying, like, my classic training, I see it. It's mostly for me. And I want all of my details to be the way I perceive them. And I perceive them as having a certain quality to the skin for me. So that's why I do this. Every time. Even if I'm just on a panel or doing an interview, I almost look this exact same, but I look the same with a little bit of makeup on. Now we get into what I think the fun stuff is. So I think that is, I'm going to just check it under light. Move my... And this is not as heavy as, say, theatrical makeup, which I showed you with GRWM. He is full coverage. They make full coverage natural skin tone makeup as well. But I don't think that is needed for this. I'm not doing that kind of work. It's mostly for stage, where you really will look oily and odd on stage if you're not wearing full coverage makeup under stage lights specifically. Okay, so the next thing is contour. So you'll notice that now that I have foundation on, I look pretty much the same, but there's just like a flatness to full coverage foundation that the shadows don't show as clearly of your face. And so one of my favorite things is next, which is contouring. So this is a bronzer palette. This is the one I've been using for a little while. It's about to run out. You see that? It's all the way down in that little... It's fine. I love this contour palette. Again, just like anything, it should match your skin tone, both the warmth of your skin or the coolness of your skin, which if you don't know, people's skin is not just darker or lighter. It is also warmer or cooler. It can have all kinds of other factors that actually give it a slightly different color quality to it. And so like the depth and the warmth of the color is so important for specifically makeup that's going on your skin. This is also where I'm going to start getting into what I do specifically for mask makeup, because I think that my natural facial structure, I'm very fond of it. I like how I look in general. And so most of what I do is learned from doing contour for my face the way that anyone would teach you to do contour. So if you want to go and learn how to contour your face, there are some really great tutorials. There's some that I think are a little overdone, some that are trying to move your facial structure to suit someone's beauty standards. So absorb them with caution, but if nothing else, like, go find some cool tricks. I do something I think very boring and basic because I do it very quickly. But all those like get ready with me videos on TikTok of people like doing the thousands of different colors of foundation on their face. It's an incredible art form of painting the structure you want people to see on your face. That I don't find a need for myself. But if that will help you feel more the way you would like to feel, or present the character that you're trying to present, or present yourself the way you're trying to present more, I highly recommend going and learning about contouring as an art form. I do a very, very, very basic contouring to kind of prey on the expected. Very often it'll be like, because I have relatively shallow eyes. I am East Asian by descent. And so I will very often like deepen my eye sockets for characters that are, say, more either of European descent or like styled that way. I do a little bit anyways, just because I do like to give my eyes a little bit of depth. But it's all about where you put the shading, basically. That's all contour is shading and highlight, shading and highlight. So we're going to do some. So this is my brush that I use. It's technically a blush brush, I think. No, it's a contour brush. I'm wrong. It's fine. And I'm just going to get some of this bronzer on here and paint that on. And I'm doing the darker part under the bone because that is where the shadow naturally falls. And you can even see, like, if I pucker my lips, which is the cheat that everyone does on social media, you can see the line that I'm following. And I'm just doing it from like the middle of my cheek back to my hairline. And I'm going to do that on both sides. If I can see around my microphone. So much microphone. Who put this here? Because this palette is running low, it takes a lot of time to put that one on. Okay, so the other things that I specifically put shadow behind, like I said, I do a little bit in the eyes because I like a slightly more recessed eye look than what I think my makeup just gives me naturally. So I'm putting the same contour in my eye sockets. It's not eyeshadow. It's literally like painting in the depth of my nose bridge. I don't know if you can see the difference there, but suddenly I have a nose bridge. And to that end, I also do the underside of my nose, though I don't need it for Bob and Lure, but I'm going to do it today because that's what I do. Just to give a little bit of depth to that as well. As if my nose needed more shadow, but I like the shape of my nose. I just want the difference between the upper lip and the underside of my nose to be more visible. And then with the same breath, you can see the shadow that's naturally underneath my lip, but I just like to add a little more. Just like that. And then the last place that I add shadow is next to my eyes. I do my temples. And it's very subtle. You'll notice none of this is extremely dark. I would say that the contour that I use is like 2 steps darker than my normal skin at most. Like barely visibly darker. But it's enough that the camera picks it up. And nothing more. I've used darker colors for like vampire characters or like people that are undead to really like make my face look really exaggeratedly dimensional. But for the most part, I stick to the same one, which is why it's almost empty. Okay, so the next thing that I do is my last major contour, which is the underside of my jaw. I love a jawline. I think I have a great jawline, and I want everyone else to know it. So I do a little bit of this so that, beard or not, everyone can see the shape of my jaw. You're so right, Erica. Color theory really does help. And researching like kinds of makeup and who makes it and who they're making it for also really helps, because culturally there are some like it's not universal, but there are definitely like culturally some makeups, like if you are black, there are makeup lines that are just better catered to the depth of color for black skin. There are makeup companies that cater specifically to people of East Asian descent, people who are specifically of South Asian descent, people who are specifically of Latine of some form descent, because there are like somewhat consistent colors that are more prevalent among those cultures, but it really varies. So the reason why like I will fight God for my foundation that I use is because I am mixed. My colors are also in that world of being mixed. My parents are very different skin colors. And I always get to go, how much did they make this makeup for people who have my skin color? Nah, it could be a mixed bag. So yeah, there's my contour, and like Fenty is makeup for people of color, is like one of their main markets. This is actually Fenty by Rihanna that I am using. But you can also get stuff again at a drugstore. I am not here to sell you on expensive makeup. I'm here to say buy what works and use that. Okay, so that's all the contour I do. That's it. It's nothing too special on the contour. And the other one, and big shout out to Lena, because I did not do this for years, and every time I look at pictures before I did it versus pictures that of after, Lena was like, hey, you should do your eyebrows. And I went, I don't need to do my eyebrows. I have dark eyebrows naturally. They're like black. They're probably thick. I don't need to do my eyebrows. You see how like almost the color recedes, especially with the foundation on, of my eyebrows? We're gonna paint those bad boys back in. So we're gonna do the opposite of what is currently happening with my eyebrows, which they're receding into the color of my skin. So this brush is technically, I think, an eyebrow brush. I don't know. It's a beveled brush. It's a little bevel brush that I use specifically for this. And this is black eyeshadow. Just black eyeshadow. So if you have not black eyebrows, this probably will look a little different on you. Maybe go get brown, or they make brow palettes. There's all kinds of pens and things that you can buy that also do this exact thing. I just really like powdered makeups. This is like a slightly creamed black makeup that I use for everything. So all I'm going to do is turn on my mirror and paint in my eyebrows. Just to really accentuate that, yes, I do have a split in my eyebrow there. But for specifically Bob and Lure, I do not do the later part of my eyebrow. So I'm just doing the front because I paint the other side white. Ambidexterity at work, everybody. Because I cannot reach over my microphone without bumping it and annoying all of you. Oh, I was going to show you, and I didn't. You can really see it on this eyebrow, though. This side is painted in, and this side isn't. And it's not just because the hair is thinner on this side. So now I have eyebrows. Isn't that nice? I like having eyebrows. I mean, some people don't really have eyebrows, but like super fine, like almost white eyebrow hair color, but I think eyebrows are wonderfully expressive, and I'm a big fan, and I usually even do this fun thing that is so lost in my eyebrows, but my actual natural brow shape has this like anime point in it that I always try and accentuate because I think it's very fun. So let me see if I can lean into the camera so you can really see it, because this is one of those things. It's like, this is for me. This is my gender expression, is funny villain anime eyebrows. So you see this little point right at the top? My eyebrows do naturally do that, but I fully paint it in every time. You can kind of see how this side even does it up here, but I like painting it in because I think it's fun. And yeah, eyebrows are expressive. I talk with my eyebrows a lot. I think I'm, very communicative with my eyebrows. So now you can see them better than, it's a minor difference, but it's one that really like makes it pop. Big fan of eyebrows. Okay, so next then, I'm going to show you this, but I don't use it for Bob and Lure, which is to finish contouring. I do also have this iridescent highlight that looks fantastic on my skin, but because Bob and Lure doesn't have any, I don't think I need that for him to give him like a little ethereal glow. I use it for like my elves and all of my like fancy people. Bob and Lure is a little black mouse with white spots that he sits in the water so long they've turned green. He has literal like moss spots, so I don't think he gets beautiful glossy highlight, and I don't think I need it. Okay. Next, then, we're gonna get into the mousy stuff of it all. Oh wait, I'm gonna finish my eyes. Just kidding. So I have eyeliner. Love eyeliner. This is a liquid eyeliner pen. Even if I'm not wearing makeup anywhere else on my face, I love how I look with eyeliner. I think eyeliner just makes my eyes look huge. And so this eyeliner pen I use all the time. It's a cheap Wet n Wild eyeliner pen, and it rocks. It's called Breakup Proof Eyeliner. And this is their black one. I have it in brown as well. So we're just going to do, I usually do like half eyeliner. I do both top and bottom lid, not in your waterline. Never put makeup in your waterline, which is that space between your eyelashes and your eyeball. Don't do that. But I usually hold it and just swipe. And then I do half lid on the top. And just swipe. And sometimes I have to clean it up because I get a little wild with the pen. But yeah, you can just, with one eye done. No eyeliner. Eyeliner. Just a little. And this side as well. And it's so subtle that, like, unless someone's staring at you, no one's ever gonna know that you're wearing eyeliner. And plus, people wear eyeliner all the time. And if you're a fan of animation, a lot of animated characters, even if they're 3D animated, actually have black eyeliner around their eyes. And I just think that that's neat. Ooh. I just think putting makeup in your waterline is a wild idea. That is putting something that could have any kind of debris in it into your eye. And I just don't think you should do that. So, eyeliner, done. This is all of my, like, human person makeup. The only other thing that I have that I'm not going to put on, but I brought to show you, is my nude lip color that I use. Because, again, even your lips, translucent. And so this is my nude lip color. I'm not going to put it on right now because I have to go put on like a bunch of other like stuff, but I'll show you. Like, it looks like my lips. It is the exact same color. It's great. And sometimes I wear it, sometimes I don't, because lips at least have a little bit more depth to them. But lips when I need it. This is also the thing that I use for like human colored scarring. So like Arc 3 Xainan or Merrick, this is the base color that I use. And it's easy because it's just like a giant crayon. Pop up, thank you. Giant crayon. All right, that's human makeup. Now for mouse makeup. Let's become mice. It is not matte for my scars. That is because I cover it with scar liquid, so I don't need to care about the texture of the makeup at all for my lips, for my scarring. Okay, so Mayron Paradise. Let's go on a little talk about water activated face makeup. Mayron Paradise, among others. So this is their black. They make this makeup in so many colors. If you've watched me on almost anything, you've probably seen me wear so much of this makeup. There's a few companies that make good water-based makeup. I also own a bunch of Kryolan, not the paint company, the makeup company. They also do really good aqua-based makeup. They're like one of the gold standards for theatrical makeup, so I buy a lot of stuff from them too. And this is a water activated makeup, so it's basically watercolor for your face. That's how I think of this. You saw Haru and a few of my other characters. This is the makeup that I use to make those big long slashes. This is the same palette still. I've had this palette for so long and it looks like it's brand new. It's like, what, $15 per palette, and I almost feel like I haven't made a dent in it. This is what I'm using for Xainan's cracks this arc. I use it for everything. I've been using it for Bob and Lure this whole season. I also have white here because Bob and Lure has white patches in his fur. So I thought it'd be fun to do some of his details in white. I've had this white since forever. I think I got it in like 2021 and it looks brand new. So these are great. And the only thing that you need to activate the makeup part of them, because if I were to just put this straight on my face, it would be so thick and so gross, and I would sweat it off and it would look real strange. So I don't do that. But what I have are these brushes. So this is technically an eyeliner brush, I think. But it's a very, very fine tip brush. And it's so small. And this is what I use to do all my fine line and detail work. And almost exclusively this brush is used for Xainan scars, doing cracks. I've played so many characters that have had like all kinds of cracks that are all fantasy based on their flesh or in the surface of their body. So this is my liner pencil essentially, and I have multiples of them. I have so many of these little guys. Because the other thing you want to keep in mind, especially with water, just like watercolor, the colors will cross. So I have 2 bowls of water. One for black and one for white. If I were in my bathroom, I could just rinse the bowl out. But I'm all the way over here at my desk, so we're not going to do that. The other thing, when you buy, especially Mayron Paradise, my tip to you, free from me to you, is write the name of the color on the lid. Because they're not marked otherwise. And then you're going to go, which lid is this? And then you run the risk of putting the black on your white. Or the green in your purple. I may run into this problem regularly with the green and the purple. So I've written the names of the makeup, the color names on the lids. Highly recommend that. So, Bob and Lure is a mouse. He has a mouse nose. Opinions on Snazaroo. I've never heard of Snazaroo, so I couldn't give you an opinion on it. I'm going to assume that's a makeup company. So all I've done is dip my brush in the water, just like you would if you were using watercolor. And I'm going to lightly wet the surface of the makeup. Do that a few times just to really get some wetness in there. And now we're going to become a mouse. So I decided on a pretty exaggerated nose for Bob and Lure because he is a comedic character. So, oh, little Shiv has pooped you on the nose. Baby boy. Okay, so here we go. This is the steady hand part of this job. And I decided that the line would go from the like very tip, the natural tip of my nose to the top of my nostril crease on both sides, making a slight V and doing like full coverage below that. So, the same thing on this side. Not my best line work, but that's okay. And now I just fill it in. So especially for things like large geometric shapes or large areas, I'm gonna use my little oops proof stuff because I don't love that. So I'm wetting this Q-tip and I'm just gonna use it to kind of erase some of this because I don't love that line. Being careful to not like scrub it off because I would scrub off then the other makeup around it, which I don't want to do. Okay, that's better. And now we're gonna try again. I'm actually gonna use a little bit of this to cover any residual of the black that was there. Perfect, like it never happened. And it happens all the time where, oops, I don't like that line. I'm just gonna change that. It only gets hard when you're doing things like beards or stuff with texture or when there's layers. So like, God forbid, I screw up on like Xainan's cracks. Because there's like 5 layers of makeup underneath that. That's better. I like that line more. This tends to be what happens with Bob and Laura is I kind of like finesse it around until I'm happy. There we go. For unsteady hands, actually, a fun trick is that they make basically rulers for your face. So you could hold the ruler with one hand and paint with the other, and it will help you guide the brush. So that's what I did with some of the early work, especially on Haru, with those really big graphic lines on my face. Was I bought these? They're meant for people doing like winged eyeliner who don't have steady hands, but you can use them anywhere on your face. No one says you can't. They're not in your bathroom judging you. They're silicone, so you can wash them. They're great. So yeah, we're just gonna fill in the nose. Because again, like Bob and Laura is kind of a comedy character. It's a very like mixed, funny / moments of black seriousness show. So I thought it'd be really fun to do something a little bit silly. He's not my most serious character I've ever made. And so I thought it'd be fun to do something a little bit more cartoony for him, including that he's a mouse and it's not every day you get to play a mouse. If I really wanted to make this black look really black, the other thing I could do once it was done being painted on is add some of that black eyeshadow over the top of it. It really helps make the black look matter. And I could be using a bigger brush for this part, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna work with the one tool that I've gotten dirty instead of a bunch of them. And for other shows, many other shows, this would be also when I'm listening to my character playlist, maybe listening to a previous episode, just to kind of like get in the mindset, because now I'm becoming a mouse. Now I want mousy things, like my raft named Gertrude. Or to find the lost Fumis in the Valley of Dust. All these are things from the show, I promise. is fun because all of the different villages in What About Bob's, our GM, they ask us for names, and they ask the like Discord and the chat for names all the time. And so a bunch of the villages we've named. So I've just been naming them after friends and family members. So Fumi is my grandmother's name. And so there's a village of Fumis in the world, and they're all named Fumi something. We were in the village of Jeremy's not long ago, and everyone there was named after a famous person named Jeremy. So it was very chaotic because we had like Jeremy Renner, the mouse. Jeremy Allen White from The Bear was a mouse. He was a chef. Like I said, it's a both very serious and somewhat unserious game. We have a good time. Okay, so that's most of my little mousy black nose all done. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to go a little faster. Okay, so the second to last thing on here for the black is we're going to do little whisker marks. Do, 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 do. And this is literally just a little bit of black on the brush. Doing it full, like, little kids Nutcracker style. Which I did do as a mouse, as a child. I was so cute. Then little dots. Big enough that they might be seen on a camera from a decent distance. And randomly dispersed, because that's how whiskers work. And that's all the whiskers. And now the last part is the white. So I'm going to switch brushes and water. And wet the brush, wet the white paint, wet the brush, wet the white paint. Okay. So Bob and Lure was established very early on that he got into a bite with a great sea beast. And by sea beast, I believe it was a snake. And so he has a giant scar. He actually only has one eye because he's like modeled off of all the old man in the sea tropes. So I gave him this big white scar. Because I don't know if you've seen a lot of animals that have black fur actually scar white because their skin is actually white. Like my cats. My cats have white skin underneath all their black fur. So that'd be fun to do his scar in white. Up his whole little mousy face. I do it through the eyebrow and then up. And I'm just kind of swirling it around. It's kind of a cartoony scar, but I like it. And then the last thing I do for me as a treat is I also put white on my dashed eyebrow end. Because he's got white patches all over his fur. Instead of filling it with black. And the cool thing about this cream makeup is it also will color your hair. And because it's just water, you can again just wash it off. So it's actually covering my eyebrow hairs a little as well. And there it is. I am now all geared up and ready to go for Mouse Ritter, except there's one more final touch. Because all makeup, you want it to stay on your face, especially water-based makeup. So this is full of Final Seal by Ben Nye. I buy it in large jars because I use so much of it. This is a spray-on set spray. And I'm just going to lightly mist it on my face. Oh, and that's what this is for. This big old fan. So once I spray it, I'm going to use this to fan it. So I'm actually going to mute myself so you don't all hear the wind sound. So enjoy the show. There we go. Hello. And using set spray, you want to keep your face relaxed. Don't scrunch it up. And wait until it is done drying. But that is the entire makeup process for Bob and Lure. I have one question from Luigi Man 60. How many colors have you done scars in? Oh my gosh, so many. I've done blue scars, purple scars. I did one that's a fire scar. I've done Xainan's cracks. I love doing scar makeup. I don't think I've ever done one in white before. Bob and Lure is a new one for that. But that's all for this stream and the first stream of Seems Right, a costuming and storytelling show. I'll be back with more soon from Seems Right, but you can catch me later this week. I'm going to check my schedule really quick. You can also check my schedule on all of my socials, but I will be back on Friday for a gaming stream, and you have spoken and I have listened. The first gaming stream based on the polls, which you can fill out by following the links in chat for the suggestions. So !suggest. The game poll, right now, the favorite game is Hades, so I'm going to actually be playing Hades 1, and we're going to be talking about Greek myths and all the ways that they use it to tell the story in the Hades game series. But in the meantime, come check out Mouse Order tonight on Happy Jacks RPG. It is at Happy Jacks RPG on all social media platforms. And you can come and check out more Sun and Chains on Thursday over on Bad House RPG. And then, of course, on Saturday, more of the Chaos Protocol over on Transplanter RPG at 5 p.m. And I'll see you all there. In the meantime, thanks for hanging out and becoming a mouse with me. And I look forward to more costume talks soon. But in the meantime, everyone have a wonderful evening.